A top aide to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been arrested on suspicion of leaking classified information to the foreign press, and Netanyahu himself is under scrutiny.
אם נתניהו ידע, הוא שותף לעבירה ביטחונית מהחמורות ביותר שישנן בספר החוקים. אם נתניהו לא ידע, מה הוא כן יודע?
Here's what's happening. Back in September, Hamas executed 6 Israeli hostages, and Israelis were furious. Netanyahu called a press conference, and he suggested that Hamas might be preparing to smuggle hostages out of Gaza over the Egyptian border. He insisted the Israeli military had to stay on the Gaza-Egypt border. Hamas disagreed with that, and even Netanyahu's defense minister suggested that it could jeopardize a deal. Then 2 articles came out in the British and German press that said there was intelligence to back Netanyahu's claim. It helped bolster his case. Netanyahu's critics say he's trying to prolong the war in Gaza to avoid an election, something he denies. Now, not only does an Israeli court say that the information that made it to press was classified, the opposition say it was faked. And the British newspaper seems to agree. It deleted every article ever written by the journalist and cut ties with him. Netanyahu's office denies any leaks and says that the idea that the stories impacted negotiations with Hamas is, quote, ridiculous. At a time when Israel's fighting a multi-front war and tens of thousands are dead, Netanyahu's domestic troubles
שהמחיר יהיה כבד מנשוא, כרגע המחיר לא כבד מנשוא, אבל התקפה רבת היקף על הרשות הפלסטינית. מדברת על פחד שהכל מתמוטט.
לא פוחדים, צוחקים להם, יראו לנו לתוך הישב פה בצחוק ופשוט הם לא פוחדים לצחוק.
זה מה שמביא אותם
ואז, רגע, אבל אז השוק מהעולם יגיד מה, אתם פוגשים? אתה לא מפחד מהעולם, ביבי.
במיוחד היום עם אמריקה, אני יודע מה זה אמריקה. אמריקה זה דבר שאפשר להזיז אותו בקלות, להזיז לכיוון הנכון. אבל לא יכניעו לנו.
אז אם אנחנו עושים לזה משהו, אז הם...
יש שאלה, אז נניח שהם אומרים משהו. אז אמרו, 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בנו. זה אבסורד. לא פחדתי לתאמן שם. לא פחדתי להתאבד עם קריטון. לא פחדתי להתאבד עם עבוד. מה היו הסכמי אוסלו? הסכמי אוסלו שהכנסת חתמה עליהם. שאלו אותי לפני הבחירות התקיים, אבל בתנאי כפוף להדדיות וצמצום הנסיבות. אבל איך אתה מצמצם את הנסיבות? אני אתן פירוש להסכם שיאפשר לי להפסיק את הדירה הזאת לקווי 67. איך עשינו את זה? אף אחד לא אמר מה זה אתרים צבאיים מוגדרים. אתרים צבאיים מוגדרים, אני אמרתי, אלה אזורי ביטחון. בקעת הירדן, מבחינתי זה אתר צבאי מוגדר.
נכון.
זה אוקיי.
יישובי בית שאן, עמק בית שאן.
לך תגיד. אבל אז הייתה שאלה, מי יגדיר מה זה אתרים צבאיים מוגדרים? קיבלתי מכתב מקריסטופר, אליי ולערפאת, באותה לשון, שאומר שישראל בלבד, היא זו שתגדיר מה הם את מיקום האתרים הצבאיים האלה ואת גודלם. עכשיו, הם לא רצו את המכתב הזה, אז לא נתתי את הסכם חברון. הפסקתי את ישיבת הממשלה, אמרתי, אני לא רוצה. רק כשהגיע המכתב, תוך כדי הישיבה, אליי ואל ערפאת, חתמתי על הסכם. תגיד לו שעדיף לתת 2% מאשר לתת 100%. וזו הברירה שעומדת כאן הפרק. אתה נתת 2%, ובזה עצרת את הנסיגה הזאת במקום 100%.
But Israeli military officials told these journalists, it's easier to kill somebody when they're home than it is when they're out in the street. So this AI will monitor the location of your cell phone, your smartphone, and when it arrives at the location that's been determined to be your residence, then there will be a ping to the guy who can target your house and bring it down. I guess whoever came up with this name, Where's Daddy, thought that many of them would be fathers. And that's why it's called Where's Daddy. When they reach their homes, Daddy's home, and then the entire house and everybody in it could be blown up.
في البيت وأنا على الدرج طالع أنا وزوجتي وابن أخي أمامي. تم قصف البيت علينا ب3 صواريخ، فنزل البيت فينا. أنا لما صحيت من الصدمة ومن الضرب صرت أنادي أولادي تحت، هم ينادوا علي. عرفت حالي إنه الحمد لله أنا بخير، زوجتي ماسك في إيدها. لكن رحمة ربنا إنه إحنا دخلنا بين طبقتين من الدرج وسحبونا بيناتهم.
Jade? Jade? Jade, je viens en vidéo.
من يحب إنسانا ينتظره حتى يعود بفارغ الصبر. من يحب إنسانا يأنس به ويشتاق إليه. من يحب إنسانا يزوره يبحث عنه لزيارته ولو من بعد. من يحب إنسانا يتبعه ويمشي على خطاه.
We know what it is by definition, by what the experts are telling us, and by what we have seen on our TV screens, on our phones. We've seen legal scholars say that this is a genocidal campaign to destroy Palestinian lives. So I am not going to spend any more time in this building that is actively harming folks. I just knew that I could no longer be complicit. Both of my parents instilled in me at a really young age that it's important to take care of the people in our community and to really have empathy and love for people around the world. And so that instilled in me this desire to be a public servant. The experience for me walking along border crossings and seeing children living in refugee camps, the sheer magnitude of what Israel's occupation is doing to generations of people is something that has stayed with me since that time, since being in Palestine. So I started my job at the White House in September, 1 month before October 7th, and I remember that day so clearly, but I felt this gut feeling of holding my breath, of just kind of bracing myself for what I knew would unfold after October 7th. And I felt a lot of fear for what was to happen. And I knew that specifically in my position as the deputy director for the DEIA office, this was a time when having conversations about repair and inclusion were going to be deeply, deeply necessary. So we collectively sat in a room and heard staff members pouring out pieces of themselves, of their family histories, of their personal connections to both Israel and Palestine. And it was so heartbreaking. Like, it was heartbreaking to hear how Israel's attack following October 7th was causing so much harm to people's families, and I think all of us knew that it would just continue to get worse. I think President Biden has, in his whole career, loudly been a Zionist and believes that a safe Israel means safety for all Jewish people. I don't think it takes a policy expert to see that there has been a clear party that he is mostly caring about, and that is Israelis. And that has resulted in 40,000 deaths of innocent Palestinians that we know of. It's probably a lot larger of a number. I had many junior level staff come to me and say, I have a strong opinion about this and I can't bring this up to my manager. A lot of people thought that they were going to lose their jobs. And so I was not doing well personally because I had friends in the region. I was making sure that my friends in Gaza were okay. I was connecting with people who had gone to Palestine with to say, what can we do? And so I felt this deep, almost like disembodiment as I walked into the EEOB every single day, passing protesters who were wrapping plastic baby dolls covered in blood outside of my office, or who were spraying fake blood at my feet. And I didn't feel angry at them, but I felt this gratitude for saying, thank you for reminding us what is happening in a place that feels really far away, but that our building is like directly tethered to. It was really difficult for me to do my job because I felt complicit in harm. And so, yeah, it was not an easy time. It continues to be a really difficult time, I think, for all of us as Americans who know that so much of the violence that is occurring in Palestine is happening with our funding, it's happening with our bombs. There's a complicity in that should make us feel deeply uncomfortable.
Israel's parliament just passed a law to ban the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees from operating in Israel and the occupied West Bank. The Israeli parliament is translating genocidal policies into national law, codifying the killing and starvation of millions of Palestinians with the aim of erasing current and future generations. And the two bills were backed by the vast majority of Israel's parliamentarians, I think 100 out of 120, proving without a doubt that Israel's entire government is fascist and anti-UN and anti-international law, not just the far-right politicians. The whole system is corrupt. So while the world sits here and talks about increasing humanitarian aid to Gaza, Israel is taking moves to try to legalize that which is clearly illegal under international law. And surprise, surprise, the US response is to voice deep concern over Israel's plans. Germany and the UK chose to use the word grave instead of deep in expressing their concerns. And the UK, the British government, went so far as to say that Israel's reputation as a democracy is deeply harmed by this decision. Well, I say, what a load of bullshit. First of all, Israel is not a democracy. It's an ethnocracy, a settler colonial project in which one ethno-national group dominates over others. If ever there was a time to sanction and suspend Israel from the United Nations, this would be it. But of course, that won't happen, because the US continues to protect Israel from any accountability. Israel's own foreign ministry officials have been warning that this bill, if passed, which it has been now, will threaten Israel's membership in the UN for violating its charter. The challenge, of course, is that the US has maintained its position as the largest funder of the United Nations, providing about 20% of the total budget. In 2022, it increased its funding by about $5.6 billion, reaching an all-time high of $18 billion, which is just a few $billion less than the US has sent to Israel in the last year alone. Now, the ICC has not issued the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant because the US and the UK continue to pressure the ICC not to do so. So by passing this bill, Israel is in fact openly violating international law as a member state of the UN. It has to abide by its charter. By blocking a UN agency, especially in occupied territories during a genocide, they are flagrantly violating the UN Charter and international law. So Israel, of course, is counting on the US and the UK and Germany to continue to save them from any consequences, to continue to grant them impunity from the ICJ, from the ICC, and the credibility of those organizations as well as Western powers is hanging by a thread. I mean, if they cannot protect an essential agency like UNRWA an agency that they have established and funded. From Israel, they can't protect it from this rogue state that's waging genocide and an illegal occupation for almost 6 decades. If the best they can do is express grave or deep concern, we're not just in a crisis. I mean, and by the way, Israel's cabinet also just approved another attack against Iran in response to the attack against Netanyahu's home. So I guess it's October and surprise, surprise, we're here.
You are witnessing the attempt to annihilate a nation, destroy a nation. It is not even hidden. It is in plain sight. And yet the very tools designed to respond to these situations are not being used. So which one is it? Are Palestinian lives not worth saving? Or does Israel have a license to kill? Can this council only adopt resolutions and then witness their blatant breach? This self-inflicted powerlessness has to stop. And like Algeria, we repeat, the resolutions of this council are binding. Their role is to be enforced. Their role is to change reality, not to record violations for history's purposes and then allow them to continue. Israel is responsible for the Palestinian civilians it kills. It cannot be absolved of that responsibility. It is killing them purposefully, deliberately, repeatedly, massively. It is starving them on purpose. Nobody can deny it. We sat in this room, we heard every UN agency, every testimony, every NGO, Palestinian, Israeli, international, saying the same things. This is by design.
Is this the beginning of the end for Benjamin Netanyahu? A recent survey found that 80% of Israelis hold their prime minister personally responsible for failing to prevent Hamas's horrific terror attack. Another survey found trust in the government at a 20-year low. Even before this attack, there were calls for the prime minister to resign, with hundreds of thousands taking to the streets for weekly protests against, among other things, his government's judicial overhaul. Since the October 7 attack, those calls have grown louder. Netanyahu has prided himself on being Mr. Security, but the deadliest attack in Israel's history happened on his watch, and Israelis are angry, not only by the fact that it happened, but also by how he's handling the aftermath. The families of the more than 200 hostages being held in Gaza are furious. Many of them say he's prioritizing military aims to rid Hamas over getting their loved ones out alive. And he's been heavily criticized for not accepting responsibility. Various Israeli officials have publicly taken blame for the state's failure in protecting its citizens, but Netanyahu hasn't. Instead, he sent out a tweet appearing to blame Israel's military and intelligence services for the failings. The backlash was so severe that Netanyahu deleted the post and then apologized for sending it. Israelis are largely united in the government's aim to rid Hamas from Gaza, but they don't think this is the government to do it. It's unlikely Netanyahu will respond to the calls for him to resign, and it's widely believed he'll hang on for the duration of the war. He's long been seen as a political survivor, someone who for more than 2 decades has managed to come out on top despite scandals and crises. But once the war is over, his days in office could be numbered.
These arrest warrants will have an impact because, of course, every member of the ICC, more than 100 countries, are now obliged to arrest both of these individuals, Benjamin Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, if they set foot on their territory.
I think people who are expecting to see Benjamin Netanyahu in handcuffs anytime soon are going to be disappointed. The wheels of justice, particularly at the international level, move very, very slowly. But what I think this is indicative of is that a massive shift in tide has taken place over the past year. So to now have a moment when you have this threat of full attempt to annex all of Palestine by this extremist Israeli state and Israeli government, at a time when the International Court of Justice has found that there's a plausible case for genocide, when the International Criminal Court has issued warrants for the Prime Minister of Israel and the former Defense Minister of Israel, we are looking now at a clash in the world between those who want accountability for the past 76 years of crimes against the Palestinian people that have been committed by the US-backed Israeli state, and those who believe that Israel and the United States should be able to act with impunity in the world. Where we're at right now is that for the first time in decades, since the actual establishment of this court, you see a leader of a nation state allied and bankrolled by the United States now having an arrest warrant issued for them. This is going to be incredibly significant also for Netanyahu's ability to travel to Europe, because many European nations responded to the issuance of these arrest warrants by saying that the rulings of the International Criminal Court must be upheld. It's remarkably significant that you have international arrest warrants issued for the Prime Minister of Israel at a moment when his premier legal defender, his premier bankroller, his premier arms dealer is the United States of America. And for the past year, the world has watched Israel commit massive war crimes, systemic war crimes in Gaza. It's an incredibly significant moment that the court has defied the most powerful nation in the world and issued these arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister. And remember, Vladimir Putin is also under a warrant from the International Criminal Court for the actions of Russia inside of Ukraine. Europe very much wants Vladimir Putin to be prosecuted for war crimes at The Hague. If Europe stakes out a position that this warrant should be respected for Vladimir Putin, but somehow not respected for Benjamin Netanyahu, it undermines what has become a premier foreign policy issue for most European nations, and that is holding Vladimir Putin accountable for the invasion of Ukraine. The Israelis have been running around celebrating that they killed Mohammed Daif. Well, the International Criminal Court seems to believe that he may well still be alive. What I think that this underscores, though, is the asymmetry of power here. So, yes, let's have full investigations of the conduct of everyone involved with these wars. But I believe that when all evidence is put on the table, the story that will be told by history is that for 76 years, Israel has engaged in a war of annihilation against the Palestinian people, and they've repeatedly shown them that nonviolent action doesn't work and isn't even acceptable. The story of armed resistance in Palestine is the story also of Israeli apartheid, colonialism, and a war of annihilation that has been bankrolled, armed, and supported by the United States.
لما تبخير